A few weeks ago, someone was talking about the importance of inviting church leaders to go into the harvest with you. If they've never been exposed to DMM, it's kind of a way to, kind of a first exposure. And so this story is actually from a few years ago when I was on staff at a church, and I was, sharing with different different guys in the elder team, and one guy I had trained, but it was during COVID. It was right at the beginning of COVID, and so everything was online. And normally we do in-person training, and then we practice going out. But because it was all online, there was no time to practice. So that was like in March of 2020. Well, it wasn't until September, and this is back in this is in Texas, when things started to open up a little bit. So I said to Carrie, who was one of the elders, hey, let's just go out in the harvest field. So he had never done this before, but he was one to go. So we just went to a local mall in the DFW area, just to try to find people of peace. And God was really gracious. We talked to people here and there, prayed for people, but at the very end, we saw this guy who was just sitting on one of the couches, and it looked like he was sitting next to his grandson, and he was holding a cane. So we went over to him and just told him, who we were, and asked if we could pray for him. And he said, "Yeah, sit down." So we sat down and we started talking to this guy. And so after a while, we said, "Well, yeah, can we pray for you?" And this and that. And he's like, "Yeah." And what he asked for prayer was, he said, "I really want to know God's purpose for my life." I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's great." So we were about to pray, and then the little boy who was sitting next to him said, "Well, can I join you guys?" And I thought, "Oh, that's cool. The grandson wants to join us." And I said, "Well, what would you like prayer for?" And he said, "Well, I ran away from home today." And I was shocked, and I looked at the older gentleman, and he was shocked too. And I was thinking, well, why is he shocked? Isn't this your grandson, or like? And he's like, "I don't know this kid." Like, oh, nobody knows this kid. So we're like, okay, what's going on? So we asked him, what's happening. He's about 13 years old. He had like a fight with his mom that morning, and he had run away from home to the mall. And so we prayed, and then afterward he's like, maybe I should call my mom. Yeah, yeah. So he didn't have a phone, so the older gentleman, Daryl was his name, Daryl lent the boy his phone to call his mom. And so Daryl and myself and my friend Carrie, the elder, we were just chatting. Well, the mom shows up. So the boy had told us, yeah, my father was in the hospital. He had a leg infection, and there's just so we were praying for his dad as well. So the mom shows up at the mall, pick up her son, and of course she's very grateful and everything, and she's explaining more the story of her husband in the hospital with the leg infection. And I'm thinking, man, this story sounds so familiar. Why does the story sound so familiar? And so she's telling the story. And finally, I asked her, I said, "Does your last name happen to be," and then I used her last name, "Does your last name happen to be Smith?" And she's like, "Yeah, how'd you know that?" And I said, "I was at your apartment 3 years ago, and I met your husband." It was the craziest thing. And I had met the little boy in that apartment as well. And he's like, "That's why you look familiar." And it was just this crazy divine appointment. And so we, exchanged contact. Yeah, I'll need to come back to the apartment and everything. But Carrie and I, we were just blown away. I'd never had anything happen like that before. I don't know if he's continuing to go out in the harvest field now, because this was a few years ago. But Um, the thing that I learned was that, when someone's willing to go, and I think God is just gracious with leaders who are willing to go out. I think He just wants to say, yeah, I'll be there. I'll show up. I'll I'll do what only I can do and show you that this is a good idea. So just to encourage you to keep on um, inviting those church leaders that just to try it once, just to see what happens.